I'm Kate Livie, the Director of Education and the Associate Curator here at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Chesapeake Treasure, a feature here at the Maritime Museum where we are going to be exploring an object from our collections of waterfowl, of fishing, of boat building heritage. And this week, despite looking a little ominous, this object from our collection reflects a really big and interesting part of our collections, waterfowling. So most of us are pretty familiar with oysters, with crabs, and those types of harvests in the Chesapeake. But of course, living off the land means, and supporting a family often meant waterfowling in the winter time. And what we are looking at is a body booting suit. So at the Upper Chesapeake, at the confluence of the Susquehanna River and the Chesapeake Bay, there's a really wide, open, shallow area with thick bay grasses that was always a haven in the wintertime for waterfowl. And wherever there were waterfowl, there were waterfowlers. So at the turn of the century, there were a whole new set of regulations intended to protect and conserve migratory waterfowl in the Chesapeake Bay and federally, so throughout the United States. It was an international treaty, and it changed a lot of the ways that we were hunting and harvesting in the Chesapeake. In particular, it ceased all of the commercial waterfowling that was happening in the Chesapeake at that time. So there was a lot of innovation that came about at the turn of the century where people really had to work around or create new methods of waterfowling now that the old ways were now considered illegal. So we are looking at an example of one of those innovations. Traditionally, you had been able in that area to sort of blend in with the water by creating these boats called sink boxes that allowed you to shoot level with the water surrounded by decoys rather than a shore blind where you want to look camouflaged to blend in with the marsh. This really allowed you to look like the water and shoot waterfowl from this little tiny divot in the middle of the water. Well, in the 1930s, they decided that way was also negatively impacting the waterfowl. So that also was regulated. In response, they figured, who needs a boat? So they created these body booting suits that allowed you to wade in the middle of a bunch of decoys and take a shot at the waterfowl. This body booting suit is white. Now, when we think of waterfowling, we usually think of camouflage. Camouflage is actually pretty recent, really from the late 1960s to early 1970s on. And it doesn't work very well when you want to blend in with the water. You really stick out as a dark silhouette. White kind of reflects the light the same way that the water white might, and it blends in with some of the, the diffuse light on the water. So, and also, if you're shooting in the wintertime, you've got a lot of white around you. So it's a way to kind of blend in with your environment in a way that, again, we might not think of today when everything from guns to bags to outfits is all camouflage. Body booting is still done in the Chesapeake, but most people who go out now are probably not wearing canvas suits like this. They're wearing neoprene and Gore-Tex and anything to keep warm and dry. And of course, most modern hunters today are also conservationists. So just like this body booter would have had a limit in the 1930s, modern hunters today also have a limit and are also conservation hunters. So hopefully you learned a little bit today. I know this is an object in our collection not a lot of people have ever seen before, and I certainly think it's pretty interesting and not at all what it first appears. So thanks again for joining us here for our weekly feature, Chesapeake Treasure. We'll look forward next week to another cool object and some more information on a piece of our collection and a piece of our Chesapeake heritage. Thanks so much and have a great afternoon.